In 1997, the Southwark Anti-Homophobic Forum we had our Speak Out campaign, which was one of the first big campaigns, local campaigns, to try and get more LGBT people to come forward and report homophobic crimes to the police. By that time, the police in Southwark were supportive of what we were trying to do. And we did work very, very hard. We didn't get the kind of recognition outside of our community that we would have liked. I mean, it was the gay press didn't really promote what we were doing, so we realised that we had to just concentrate on what we were doing at local level. But that's not to say that there weren't other organisations doing similar work. Gallup, the Gay London Policing Group, had been in existence for years before we started our local work. And also Stonewall had by then started to address homophobic violence in Britain, and they published, I think around 1996, their queer bashing report into this kind of area. But I always kind of felt that we were very much at the front line of what we were doing, that we were being exposed to all kinds of risks, you know, dealing with this issue and trying to get people to come forward and report and trust the police, which is a very difficult thing when you're coming from a community that historically and traditionally, like the black community, do not trust the police. So that was quite a lot of hard work, but very interesting work and very rewarding, because by 1997, when we did the campaign, you know, we were a very tight-knit, you know, and well-respected forum. It was with great pride that in 2005 we celebrated our 10th anniversary. I mean, I would never have believed back in 1995 that we would have survived that long. We're certainly recognised as one of the longest surviving lesbian and gay forums, and certainly, you know, our remit is to address homophobic crime in the local community, and that work has continued. There's been other kind of offshoots, if you like, or groups that have formed along the way in Southwark, like Schools Out, which addresses like homophobic bullying in schools, and also the LGBT network, which has been also very instrumental in raising awareness about lesbian and gay issues. And I think really one of the great outcomes for me personally was to celebrate the 10th anniversary, and I was still a member, or still am a member now, but this was 2 years ago. The police in Southwark agreed to appoint a full-time LGBT liaison officer, a police officer who is working full-time on the liaison role, liaising with the gay community, the wider community, addressing these issues. And that is almost unprecedented in London. There are a few others in other boroughs, but we were among the first to have that appointed, and the borough commander was fully behind that, which is really, really, really important. 1999 was a kind of watershed year in many ways, because at the beginning of the year you had the publication of the Macpherson report into the murder of the black teenager Stephen Lawrence, which impacted greatly on police-community relations. There was then the bombing of the Admiral Duncan pub in Old Compton Street, Soho, which again really moved the agenda forward as far as LGBT police relations went. It really did act as a kind of wake-up call to the police particularly, and local authorities, that we, lesbians and gays, were as vulnerable as everybody else. And then, on a personal level, at the end of the year, end of 1999, I was invited by our borough commander, our police borough commander, to join a new police community group called the Critical Incident Panel, where about 15, about 15 of us were originally invited to join this panel, and to offer the police kind of independent advice on any critical incident that happened on our borough. The Critical Incident Panel had only been in existence for just under a year, when we were faced with what to date has been the most traumatic and critical incident we could ever have faced, and that was the murder of the Peckham schoolboy Damilola Taylor in November 2000. There was what's known as a gold group, where 3 leading community advisors were working very closely with the police on the murder investigation, and it was quite groundbreaking stuff, because they really needed the community to come forward with information during the murder investigation, and the community links were very important. The critical incident panel, including myself, played a lesser advisory role, but we were there all the time advising the police from a community perspective, and going back to our own communities and linking them in and keeping them informed of what was happening. And it was quite a radical, I think, change in the way the police worked with the community, even though it came out of a very tragic and heartbreaking incident. The critical incident panel has been very important to me, and we have been recognised and respected in our own community by the police for the advice and the time that we've given, because all this work that I've done with the police has been voluntary. And so it was with great surprise in 2002 when I was contacted by Southwark Police and informed that I was going to be awarded a Metropolitan Police Volunteer Award at a ceremony at City Hall in 2003. So that was quite a shock, because I never won prizes at school for anything. I mean, I spent most of my school years bunking off because I hated it. And to suddenly be recognised formally with this award, which I received at a presentation ceremony from Ken Livingstone and the Police Commissioner Sir John Stevens, quite nerve-wracking, but at least I wore something sensible this time when I was photographed with a senior police officer, and not that horrible tank top which I got rid of. I'm glad I've stayed the course, because a couple of years ago Safer Neighbourhoods were launched in this country, which was an attempt to put small localised teams into our communities to work more closely with us. So the Safer Neighbourhood teams are made up of a sergeant, 2 police constables and some PCSOs. Very important initiative, but it can only work if people in the community are willing to work with the police, because the police don't always get it right all the time. They get it right some of the time and they get it wrong some of the time, but they can get it right more often if we, the community, are working with them and advising them. And I'd like to see more of that happen, because the police need us on board and they want to work in partnership. And I've seen it happen, particularly with the Damilola Taylor investigation. I've seen it work at its best when we are listened to and taken on board. And it's not easy, it's hard work, but it is ultimately very enriching and rewarding work. Looking back over the years I've dedicated to working as a voluntary community advisor to the local police, I've called this documentary Changing Relations, and that's very much what it's all been about: changing attitudes, changing perceptions, my own as much as the police. But I think for me it really came home recently when my father became very ill and I knew he was dying, and he knew that he was dying, and he took me to one side when we had a moment together on our own just before he died, and he took my hand and he said how proud he was of the things I'd done with my life. And I think we all look for parent approval. I was very lucky, I had a very loving, caring father, but I always remember back to 1995 when I came out as gay in that police forum, the police consultative group, and there were these senior police officers there, and when I told my dad, he was absolutely horrified. He said, how can you tell police officers you're gay? You'll get arrested, they'll put you in prison. Because that's, someone from his generation was brought up with that, because up until 1967, homosexuality was a criminal offence. And so my poor dad thought the worst. You know, you don't tell police officers you're gay. And I think by the time he died, he'd realised that, particularly when he saw the photograph of me with the police commissioner, because he wasn't able to attend that ceremony, which was a shame, that made him very proud and made me realise that I'd done the right thing and got my father's approval, which is always a good thing.